An excerpt from Chapter 2 of The Perfect Blend. The bell above the door chimed, and not looking up, she called out, "I'll be with you in a sec." "Take your time," the voice called back. Suppressing a scream, Rachel, still armed with a cloth and spray, picked her way through the tables and chairs and flung her arms around the older woman who had walked through the door. "Get off me," the woman pleaded as she tried to bat away the arms that held her in a warm embrace. A smile played on the woman's lips as Rachel continued to embrace her. "What are you doing here?" Rachel asked. "I didn't expect you back this week." When Georgina spoke, a lump started to form in her throat, and her voice changed as she swallowed hard. "I couldn't let you do it all by yourself. It's hard enough sometimes when it was the three of us." The last couple of words seemed to lodge in her throat as a small sob escaped. Rachel pulled the woman tighter and gently replied, "I'll be fine. Simon will be here soon, and Molly is coming straight from school. We've got it covered. You don't need to be here. Why don't you go back home? I've got it under control." Georgina Turnbull gave a weak smile. "I'll feel better being here." Rachel stepped back so she was an arm's length away and scrutinized her boss, who was older than her by a good 20 years, and for once the extra years showed. The lines around Georgina's eyes, her slightly sagging jawline, and the lack of definition of her muscles seemed more pronounced. Dark shadows had formed under her slightly puffy eyes, and she seemed to have lost a few pounds. She looked tired and sad, yet Rachel felt her intelligence, her strength and her effectiveness oozing out of her pores. She had an air of confidence that surrounded her, a confidence that had nearly all been sapped from her. Georgina had a slightly rounded chin, enclosing thin, delicate lips, the lower lip slightly fuller than the top. One of the corners turned up slightly. The lopsidedness gave the impression of a mischief-loving smile, not quite a grin, that in better times would allow laughter to escape. Her nose implied a Roman style, and the deep brown eyes probed hers, looking for clues. The cropped hair contained different shades of reds and browns, interspersed with many flecks of grey. The grey colour was denser at her temples and fringe. The close cut emphasized the noble look of her skull. Wrinkles framed the high chiselled cheekbones and accentuated the eyes, drawing Rachel in, mesmerizing her. Georgina, uncomfortable with the scrutiny, looked away and broke the spell. Rachel gently lifted Georgina's chin with her forefinger and raised her eyebrows in another silent question. Concern and worry radiated from her eyes. "I'm okay," Georgina reiterated. "Sure?" "Sure," Georgina nodded. She looked at the pile of dirty dishes and asked, "It looks like you were busy." "It did get a bit hectic. Everyone seemed to come in together." Georgina, still in her coat, started stacking the dishwasher. Between them, the coffee house soon returned to normalcy. "Thanks," Rachel said, as she again took the time to study her boss. "You look exhausted. Why don't you take yourself home? The rush is over. I've got this." Georgina placed her hand on the younger woman's arm. The hand showed the beginning signs of aging. The skin looked thin and the small brown spots were beginning to show. A couple of her knuckles were starting to protrude with a hint of arthritis. "I know, but as I said, I'd rather be here. I have to do something. I'm going stir-crazy staying at home, but as it's quiet I might do some paperwork out the back." Rachel nodded her understanding. She had never seen Georgina look so lost and defeated. She had expected sadness, but this was something else, as though her whole world had been rocked to the core. Her heart went out to her boss and her friend. She showed her support by saying nothing, but communicating everything. Georgina walked towards a door marked private. She keyed in the code, and as she pushed open the door, she turned and said, Let me know when your cousin arrives so I can thank him for stepping in. Will do. Rachel looked deeply into Georgina's eyes, and the unspoken question was asked. Georgina smiled a little, visibly touched by her question, and said, I'm fine. Stop worrying. Rachel gave another understanding nod and busied herself behind the counter. Georgina watched her employee begin to rearrange the cakes and other assorted goodies. She closed the door and sat down behind the desk. She sighed as her eyes fell on an old framed photograph. A smile played on her face as she remembered when it was taken. Well, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed. As I said, this excerpt was from Chapter 2 of The Perfect Blend, my latest novel. Signing off, Teresa Purkis.